Today on Dirt Lifestyle, we are going to do a video about probably the most hated tool on the internet, the Harbor Freight Pipe Bender. Don't get me wrong, these are hated for a number of great reasons, but if you do some of the tips that I show you today, you can absolutely make good-looking bends. I'm not going to say great-looking bends. You can make good-looking, acceptable bends, and you can build a lot of different parts for your off-road rig on the cheap. I bent that bumper with this bender. There's a pretty tight bend here, a bend that a lot of people say is not doable, and then we've got a bend here on the side. These rock sliders were made with this bender. The bend in that 2-inch, quarter-inch wall DOM lower arm, well, I guess it's not a lower arm, it's a radius arm. This was made with that tube bender. This bender right here, also made with that tube bender. I keep calling it a tube bender, it's a pipe bender. I'm gonna do this the entire video, I apologize. The reason this bender gets such a bad rap is its design. Its design sucks. This design kinks everything you put in it if you don't take the proper precautions. When you pump the ram, it pushes the center of your pipe between these rollers. And since it's pushing on the center of the pipe, you can't bend it very far before you end up putting a kink in the pipe. You don't have this problem with thick walled pipe, but with anything that isn't super heavy duty wall, like quarter-inch, you're gonna definitely kink the pipe right in the center if you get over like probably a 20 degree. A bender like my JD2 bender does not push all the pressure into the center of the pipe or tube. Instead, it rolls it around a radius. So it uses the die, it anchors in one point, and it rolls the pipe around this die, making it to where it's not putting constant pressure on one part of your tube or pipe. When I use a Harbor Freight pipe bender, I try to simulate what would be bent with the JD Square bender. So I have a line marked on the center of all my dies, or at least the ones that I use, and then what I'll do is I'll take a tape measure. I'll measure at 1-inch intervals, so we'll go 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. We're going to slowly apply pressure throughout the bend in these 1-inch intervals. First thing we need to do is we need to slide the pipe into the machine, and we need to get some tension on it. Now we have plenty of tension on the pipe to keep it mounted in the machine. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually lay this on its side. I make all of my bends with the machine on its side. It has feet on one side of it if you look real close, and I think that this makes it a lot easier to manufacture anything in this machine. The next thing I do is I put a level on one side of the pipe in order to get it as close to level as I can every time that I make a little bit more of a bend and then go to the next increment or the next line, make a little bit more of a bend. And then as long as that stays level, the bend should be square. Otherwise, if you guess, you could look down your 90 and you could see the pipe do one of these. We don't want that. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to give it 5 pumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's not a whole lot of bending action going on yet, so I'm going to give it another 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to do 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're at 15 pumps. So what I want to do next is I'm going to release the tension. I'm going to slide to the next mark, and I'm going to do 15 on that one, and so on and so forth. We're going to pump this ram until we just start to feel it barely start to bend, right about there. With machines like this, there's a lot of going by feel. Now we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to make sure it's not kinking. I'm going to go ahead with the other 5. 5. Looks pretty good. Let's take a look at these two bends. This is the one we just made, which is with our Harbor Freight bender. And then the one on top here is one we made with the JD Squared bender. This is a 90. This I thought was a 90, but not quite. But either way, we can compare the two because it's very close to a 90. Now with the JD Squared, it's very smooth throughout. It does get a little bit thinner in the middle. This, you can feel just a little bit of a bump on the inside, and it gets thinner in the middle, just like the JD Squared. These little bumps and ridges are to be expected with a bender of this style. Also, if you use really thin material, you'll notice where your the rollers contact the upper part of your pipe or tube, you might get some divots. I didn't have that problem with this material here. This is actual pipe, not tube. This is tube, not pipe. The difference is pipe is actually different tensile strength steel, and pipe is measured with the inside diameter because pipe is made to carry you know, gas or carry water or carry whatever from one place to the other. Tube is measured outer diameter, and tube is not made to carry stuff through it. Tube is just made as like a fabrication piece or a supporting structure. This is Schedule 40 black iron pipe. I believe it's 1 inch or maybe 1.25 inches, somewhere in there. But either way, this doesn't bend as much on the outsides from the rollers and whatnot because it is a thicker wall, even though it's a lower tensor strength steel, because it's a thicker wall tube or pipe in this case, it makes it to where it's a little bit more forgiving when you're using a pipe bender, of course. With thinner wall tube, you're gonna get less than desirable results. You can definitely still do it using this exact same method that I did here. You just might need to do 1/2 inch increments instead of 1 inch increments. But either way, if you slowly work your way all the way up your tube or pipe, it makes a big difference in the end result. This stinger with that pipe bender was a 1.5 challenges, and if I remember correctly, I might have had to bend more than one in order to get my desired result. I believe this was bent in 1/2 inch increments all the way around, and it took forever. And then I think I went through, after I bent it once, I think I went through and bent it again all the way through the exact same marks. But the finished result is good. If you take your time with these machines, you can actually get a pretty decent bend. Something else to consider is a lot of people have hacks. If you can look it up, you can do Harbor Freight tubing bender hacks, and there's a whole bunch of different hacks you can do to these machines. A couple of them I think would work really well, and there's a few of them that there's just no merit. There's no way it would make any difference. One that I've seen is they grind out the inside of the dies in order to make it a little bit deeper and to be able to make it to where your pipe or your tube fits a lot more snug. I could see where that might work. I've never taken the time to do it because I've gotten pretty good results using the method that I just showed you. I've been using that for about a decade, and I haven't really had many problems with kinking. The whole key is just to go slow and do it the right way. Another hack you're gonna find is people will cut one size larger tube or pipe, and then they'll basically make it as a way that it can cup over the top of the material you're bending, and then you put like a cotter pin, or sorry, not a cotter pin, but you put some sort of a pin through to make it to where it holds it tight to the top of the pipe. I personally don't think that's gonna make a difference, but I don't know. It would have to be pretty dang tight because it would have to be pretty much form fit to the top of your material in order to make it to where it's gonna resist any sort of bending or kinking. Another hack that you're gonna see is people will take and they'll cover their material in WD-40. This is not gonna make a difference. Because this just pushes in the center of the pipe, there's no sliding here. There's no reason to lubricate it. This rolls. You can hear that rolling in there. So if anything, you could maybe put a little bit of lube on the inside to make sure that it doesn't bind and that it rolls freely. But covering the pipe is not gonna, and WD-40 is not gonna make it slide easier through something that is rolling. Another method you're gonna find online is filling this with sand. This will work really well. People have been doing that for a long time. You can fill it with sand, you can heat your material, and you can bend it around something round. You don't need to use heat in this case, in my opinion, but you can fill this with sand. If you pack the absolute crap out of it and make sure that there is no extra little spots for that sand to go, it could definitely help keeping this from kinking. But this is already pretty labor intensive. I mean, you're gonna spend, on a bend like this, you're gonna spend like 15 minutes or so. It's probably gonna be double that if you gotta pack it with sand super, super tight and then figure out ways to plug it. You could use freeze plugs. I'm sure there's a lot of different things you could plug the end with to make sure that the sand doesn't get loose. But either way, that would work, but it's gonna be a lot more labor intensive. The next hack you could do would be cut a piece of pipe in half that's the next pipe size bigger than whatever it is that you're bending. And then you can just cut a little sleeve, I don't know, 6 inches or so. So when your roller goes across it, it's not gonna put any sort of divots or dents into your material. If you're gonna be bending larger material like that 2x1/4 wall that I have for my lower suspension links on my Jeep, this is gonna flex out. I mean, with one hand, I can push that out. So when I was bending that 2-inch, I saw it start to flex. I went and got some really long bolts. I put bolts through here, bolts through there, and it helped keep everything together while I was making that bend. That bend was scary. The ram made a lot of noise, but it did do it. And the bender is still here working today. They haven't slowed down on selling these JD Square benders, and that's for a reason. Even though a setup like this is gonna cost you, with dies, probably close to 1,500 bucks, and the Harbor Freight, is gonna be under 200, this is much easier to use. This is the reason that I own both though. I don't bend really thick walled material with the JD Square bender. I save all of that heavy duty work for the Harbor Freight, because if I blow it up, not a big deal. This doesn't seem to like to bend heavy duty, real thick walled material, so I don't. I bend all my thinner walled stuff like this. This is gonna be good for roll cages, anything you wanna bend that's 180 wall or smaller, in my opinion. With the Harbor Freight tube bender, I would never do a roll cage. You cannot risk safety with a bender like this. But if you wanna make some bumpers, you wanna make some tube fenders, you wanna make some sliders, it's perfect for that. I'm working on a bunch of my bigger build series right now, so I'm gonna make this video nice and short. If you learned anything, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you wanna follow me on social media, I am @DirtLifestyleNate. We'll see you next time.